This is the absolute best way to catch and expose culprits and attackers. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the logging for accountability in the concept of incident response and incident management. Logging is a very, very big deal, as we've already established, and so is accountability. So just knowing what this actually means and where it fits in is the whole idea behind the video today. And it's, I think, going to be mostly read stuff where we're just going to read through concepts and different types of course materials, but it's something that's very important for you to understand, mainly because of the fact that, I mean, it's one of those things that is kind of boring to talk about, but it's super important when it comes down to incident response and incident management. So the introduction here says that logging is used to provide a source of truth for activity that occurs on a network. It's most commonly used, but not limited to, incident response and security monitoring. During the incident response process, a user may be held accountable for an action or behavior, and logging plays a crucial role in providing a user's actions or improving a user's actions. Accountability is the final pillar of identification, authentication, authorization, and accountability. The IAAA model, this is a part of identity and access management, and it's used to protect and maintain confidentiality, integrity, availability, all that good stuff. So it holds users and peers on a network responsible for their actions, and logging is how you can backtrack that and actually audit that entire process to make sure that you actually can hold somebody responsible. So to ensure the efficacy of accountability, logs and other data sources must be protected, and they should be authentic, obviously, meaning they should actually be real. They shouldn't be fake. They shouldn't be manufactured or fabricated, right? And if you can't prove that a log was kept in its original state, it loses its integrity, which, going back to the confidentiality integrity part, for accountability and the incident response process. And you can't really rely on whether or not it's good. And in a lot of cases, good attackers will erase their tracks from the logs, so you don't see that they were in your system or in your network. So the best hackers actually do that. The objectives are understand where the data originates, how it's stored, and how a security engineer can leverage it, understand why accountability is important to security, and how logging can help improve the efficacy, apply logs and other data sources to incident response, and the principle of accountability. And before beginning this room, we need to understand logs, which I should have already done, I think, and we've already done Splunk basics. Actually, I haven't done understanding logs, but I mean, we can do this later. It's not that big of a deal. Intro to logs, I don't think should be something that you would need to see a video on, although because I haven't done it, I'm gonna end up doing a video on this anyways. But it's one of those things that you should understand so far, or you should have like a basic understanding of what a log is. Splunk basics, we've already done a video on this for sure, because we have all the green check marks right here. So I know that for a fact that I've done this, and I know I just did a series on Splunk. So you can definitely go check out the series on Splunk if you haven't watched those videos yet. And yeah, those are our prerequisites for what we're going to be talking about today. And at the very end of this, we actually have a machine that we're going to be working with. So that should be pretty fun too. All right, let's move into the importance of logging and data aggregation. All right, so logging aids any member involved in the incident response process depending on the source. It can provide different benefits or visibility into a network or device. Some examples could be if files were created, if emails were sent, any other technique or procedure that's been outlined by the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which if you've never checked out, this is like a very, very cool resource, and for every tactic or technique. So for example, for this attack vector of privilege escalation, there is 5 different processes for access token manipulation, and then it gives you the procedure examples and the different groups that use them, or the different attacks that use this particular technique in there. And then you can literally go through this whole thing, and there's just so much resource available that outlines exactly what they did. So very, very cool resource. If you've never checked it out, check out the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So because logs play an important role in incident response, they have to be authentic, and when they're analyzed, they need to be identical to the time that they were produced. and adding accountability to the incident response process. When logs are guaranteed to be authentic, a user can be held accountable for their actions because the log actually says what they did. This use of accountability is more formally known as non-repudiation and contributes to many threat models like the STRIDE model. And non-repudiation means that you can't debate it, you can't argue it, you can't combat it, you can't repudiate because the log says this is exactly what you did. And so non-repudiation means that an individual cannot contest an action, basically what I just said, the opposite of a repudiation. So this is where a SIM comes in, a security information and event management tool. This is a tool that collects, indexes, and searches through data from various endpoints and network locations. And we're not going to be covering, the in-depth of it, but we need to understand this is basically the tool that we're going to be using. And the tool that we're using in this particular case is ELK for Elastic Stack, and I think Kibana is it's like an open source version of a SIM, and it's super cool. I've done a couple of videos on Elastic Stack and ELK and Kibana as well, so you can go check those out on the channel. But this is the overall tool. There's a lot of different versions. Google has Chronicle, IBM has I think QRadar belongs to IBM. Wazoo is another really, really good one, which is open source. ELK, Splunk, QRadar, etc., etc. So there's a lot. And this is actually covered in the auditing and monitoring video. So I've done a video on this where we talk about logs, log management on Linux, on Windows, monitoring, the basics of SIM, yada, yada, yada. So this is a big topic, and this is one of those major tools that as a security analyst or incident responder, really, you're going to need to know how to use these things. So these are some of the basic key elements of any SIM, typically real-time log ingestion, alerting against abnormal activities, 24/7 monitoring and visibility, data insights and visualization. The dashboard is where this comes in. Ability to investigate past incidents. Really, really, really useful freaking tool. If you didn't have a SIM, you would have to go line by line through the log and read every single line. And believe me, that shit is not fun. Unless you're like Rain Man or something, that you just love ingesting data or something like that, it's not fun to read data line by line. So these tools make it very, very easy to kind of get everything in one place and try to figure out what's happening, simply because of the visual interface, really. But because of the fact that they actually ingest the logs and they process everything in real time, and then they give you some kind of a feedback for you to review. Very, very useful tools. So the question here is, a user being held accountable for their actions as proven by logs is known as what? I believe it's non-repudiation, right? Let's see if this is the actual answer. I think that's the answer that they're looking for. Let's see if that's actually it. Yep, that is it, non-repudiation. Okay, cool. So let's go into log ingestion and storage. All right, as a kind of a 30,000 foot overview, this is not by any means meant to be a detailed review of this concept, but there's three components that a SIM uses to search, index, and load balance the logs. The components are the search header or the search head, the indexer, and the forwarder. And these things are named differently based on which SIM you actually use, but the concept is the same every single time. Since we're going to be talking about, or since our focus on this room is more on accountability, we're going to be talking about the indexer and how data arrives from a device to the indexer, which is also known as data ingestion. And there's the agent forwarder process. So the agent being the endpoint, so your computer would be the agent, and the data from your agent is going to forward to the SIM itself. So your data forwards, so you being the agent and your computer being the forwarder. Essentially, that's what that is. Port forwarding is another one where you just track the activity that's done on any given port. You have the syslog, which is the log for the system, and then you can just upload logs into it. So these are the various types of data ingestion. While there are several ways of ingesting data, there tend to be fewer ways to store the data, although the primary point of failure for accountability is ingestion storage can be equally challenging. And we talked about this in the last video, where a company may make a decision to not store everything that comes in from every single log, and because of that they leave themselves open to being attacked because somebody's using an uncommon log and that log was never stored or ingested because the company was trying to save money. So yeah, when dealing with storage concerns, it is often not attackers that we have to worry about, but technical faults. For example, an index is accidentally deleted or a storage device is corrupted. These are a few examples of things to consider while keeping this data authentic and secure is important for accountability. It often has overlapping themes with compliance. Compliance and regulations go hand in hand. One such regulation may be that the log data must be archived or stored for a certain amount of time. And this happens a lot. This is very, very big in the medical field or in banking. This plays into accountability again, where non-repudiation must be applied to a log source for compliance. For example, an audit requires the past 6 months of a log source. As a stakeholder, you have to guarantee that those log sources reflect the activity of the network and, they're not deleted. Like, you actually have those logs, right? So one solution to the storage problem is cold storage. And it's a process standard for storing data, which can be summarized as storing a large quantity of data optimally. Cold storage is rarely accessed and thus does not require high-performance storage devices. Examples of cold storage may be low-cost hard drives or even tape drives. Jeez, that's super old school. Hot storage is data accessed often and requires higher performance, which may consist of solid-state drives, SSDs, and in some cases high performance hard drives. There may be other levels of access and performance throughout the lifecycle of data that can be referred to as warm storage. So it's not very frequently used, but you do use them. So it's not cold and it's not hot. It's lukewarm, right? The standard for how long data stays in each phase will depend on the regulatory requirement and company guidelines. So if you're in the medical field, for example, versus somebody who never accesses their data, for example. I don't know exactly what company that would be, but that's an example. The storage process may be data that is stored hot for 6 months, warm for 3 months, and cold for 3 years. And then after 3 years, you're no longer required to keep it and you can completely wipe it. That's an example of a cycle. PCI DSS is Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. And it's one example of a standard that requires audit logs to be stored for a year and kept immediately available for 90 days to remain compliant. So that's just one example. So here are some questions. What component of a SIM is responsible for searching the data? I'm going to venture a guess that it's the search head. Since it's searching data, that's probably it. Very good. How many years must all audit data be stored to be PCI DSS compliant? And it says 1 year, so 1. There we go. Very cool. Easy. This is like read only, and we're just getting an understanding of this. You can probably put this on like 1.5 times speed. Although I try to read really fast, so you may not understand me on 1.5 times speed or 2x speed, but yeah, it's going to be a pretty short video, I think. Okay, types of logs and data sources. So let's kind of breeze through this a little bit. All right, so here are the most common log sources and how they may be used in incident response. You have the manual log source, and it's any log that is manually written or composed by an author. So, for example, a change log. Automated log sources, any logs that are automatically generated by default. For example, a config log, a tool, something from a developer. This could be the syslog, it could be an application log. And then other logs that are categorized and often required by compliance could be an email log, messaging, or other communication, any of those things. These are just some examples of logs. There's so many logs. A good log source may not include only one log due to the nature of a network. It might require multiple logs. The network log, for example, I think it's called the connect log. It may require multiple logs, log types to create one quality log source. For example, firewall log, there you go, that's a big one. Firewall log, a system log used together to hold each other accountable. That is, the validity of one log can be proven using another, vice versa. A log source could also be collecting too much information. For example, several types of logs are collecting the same data or creating the same alerts, and it can increase noise, storage complexity, and other consequences. So you want to, I guess, keep maybe two of the same type, or maybe like they're complementary sources. They're like, adjacent to each other. They're not doing exactly the same type of logging. Yeah. A change log is an example of what log source. This is a manual log, and an application log is an example of what log source, and that would be an automated log. Very good, very good. Making good progress here. So using logs effectively. Let's talk about, this is a short one. So let's just read through this real quick. All right, there are many types of SIMs to choose from. Each feature and capability can impact how you can use your logs effectively. If you're not using a specific feature of a SIM, it doesn't signify that you're not effectively using logs, because log sources and usage requirements they vary, and it all depends on what you actually use and your usage requirements, storage requirements, all that stuff. So if you're only using logs as an incident response tool and not for real-time monitoring, you may not need or use the real-time feature of some SIMs. So very, very simple to understand. You're not live monitoring everything. You're just collecting all these things just in case something happens, and then you go back and you review what just happened, right? So as briefly introduced in task 4, using multiple log types and sources is beneficial for validating logs and creating complete story. The concept is more formally known as correlation, or building a relationship between two things, the log and the data. For example, if a user has performed a suspicious action, so for example, creating a DLL file, apparently that's a really big deal. I didn't even realize that was such a big deal, but it's a dynamic link library file, and it's a library that contains code and data that can be used by more than one program at the same time. So for example, Windows OS, the COM-DLG32 DLL performs common dialog box related functions. Each program can use this functionality that is contained in this DLL to implement an open dialog box. It helps promote code reuse and efficient memory usage. Sounds boring as fuck to me, but it's important. You see what I'm saying? Like these are some of the things that are like, it sounds super boring unless you're actually a sysadmin or a system engineer or something like that. But it's really important, and it triggers a flag. So if somebody performed a suspicious action, for example, creating a dynamic link library file, a browser application log could be used to correlate their browser search history with their behavior. If they were searching for a specific installer or troubleshooting process, it may explain the suspicious action. If email logs showed a potential phishing attempt directly followed by the suspicious action, it could cause more investigation. So data enrichment can also be included in correlation efforts. So correlation essentially means what do these various events have to do with each other? How do they connect? How do they correlate with each other? And so if somebody opens up a phishing attempt and then there's a suspicious action, so they open up the email, they click on the thing, and then after they clicked on the thing, this little worm got installed on their system, and that worm went from that computer to the next computer to the next computer. All of those events correlate with each other, and that's what's important to understand, and really what it means to use a log or logs effectively, because you're combining various logs from various sources. And this is why SIMs are so important, because for you to manually go through each one of those logs to try to figure out how things connect to each other, you would lose your fucking mind. So a SIM does all of that for you in the blink of an eye, and then it says, hey, this kind of seems like a suspicious chain of events. You should pay attention to this. So this is why we love SIMs. What is the process of using multiple log types and sources as part of an incident response formerly known as? And that is called correlation. All right, excellent. So moving on to our final task here, where we actually get to use our little tool which is Splunk. We're going to end up using Splunk and go through some interesting exercises. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so we got our Splunk server to load. I actually did this entire exercise thinking that it was being recorded, but apparently my recording cut off at like 1 minute into it. This has been a very interesting day, or last couple of days, because I don't want to bore you with it, but it took some troubleshooting just to even be able to get the server up, and it took a couple of days. So anyways, the whole idea is to first make sure that you either connect via VPN to the Splunk, to the THM server, excuse me, and load this virtual machine right here, or you can use the attack box. And what I had to do was I went through a different room that had the attack box button in it, and then I clicked open the attack box, and then when I came into this room, the attack box was open, and then I opened up the Firefox browser and I went to the IP address that they gave me down here, the URL that they gave me, so I can load the Splunk server. So that is what I had to do to be able to make this happen, and hopefully I can actually complete this recording without Splunk crashing on me, or not Splunk, my stupid recording crashing on me and stopping my recording. That would be ideal in this particular case. But all of the answers are already here. So what I'm going to show you is how I got these answers. So that way you know how we got the results instead of me just giving you the results. But basically, the questions are: how many total events are indexed by Splunk? How many events were indexed from April 15th to the 16th? How many unique users appeared? How many events associated with the user James? What utility was used associated with James? And what is the event ID for the process creation event that James put into motion? So this is how we're going to use logging to keep James accountable. Essentially, that's the whole idea here. So that being said, let's actually jump into it. And I'm going to keep an eye out on my recording to make sure that my recording doesn't crash halfway, or after the first minute, so we don't lose any of this stuff. So we have this loaded on the following screen. So it's already here, and let me just make sure that this is full screen for us. All right, so when you first load Splunk, this is the very first page that you get, and this is where you can either choose to add data or connect any kind of a application, and usually when you click on add data, it takes you through an entire wizard. There you go, that's the right word. It takes you through a wizard where it says, do you want to connect an endpoint to this? Do you want to watch a specific port? So on and so forth. Or do you want to upload a file? And in this particular case, there was a file that was uploaded. And they don't tell us any of this stuff, so we have to try to figure that out. And this is why they said it was important for you to go through the Splunk basics room before you get here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the basics, and then we're just going to go through just finding the answers to those questions. Very, very basic set of questions. So the first and the big thing that you want to do is you just want to click on search and reporting. And when you go through search and reporting, your search history will show you all of the previous searches that were ran. And I don't want to open it because these are all the searches that I just ran to find all the answers. So I don't want to kind of give it away. So the first thing that we want to do is we just want to find the specific file that we are going to be searching through. And the query that you use is index. So when you use index, you can do index equals asterisk. And when I click on that, that's going to show me everything, right? And in this particular case, it says 0 events because the time right here is just only showing the last 24 hours. So what I want to do is I want to drop that down and just click on all time instead of just the last 24 hours. And then now it's going to show me all of the events that are available here. And then we go down here and we look at the source. And the source is the actual file itself where all these events are coming from. So event equals logs.json is the actual source file, right? So what I can do now, I can modify my query here to index equals event logs, or I could just click on this and it'll bring everything up for me for that specific file. And now you look at index is equal to all these things, and then the source is event logs.json, right? So this is our updated query. And this is what's really nice about Splunk, is that any of these things that you click, it just updates your search query up here to whatever that thing is that you clicked on, so that you can learn how to build queries that way, as well as just navigate easily. So you don't have to actually type these things out. You could literally just click around. And I could click back and it'll go back to the previous query that says index equals asterisk, so on and so forth. And if I click forward, it'll go to the query that we were just at. So very, very simple to use. So now that we're inside of the right query, the total number of events is 12,256 events. So that's the answer to the first question here, which is what are the total number of events that were indexed by Splunk. Now the next one is how many events were indexed from April 15th to 16th. Very, very easy to do. You just click on this thing right here from all time, and you go from these preset parameters that are here, and you just go to date range, and then date range you go between, and then you just modify it to the dates that they want, which is, I believe, 04/15/2022 to 04, and let me do 04/16/2022. And just like that, we have the date range. We click apply, zoom back out, and it uploads everything for us, or it updates everything for us. And now we have a new number right here, which is 12,250. So instead of 56, we have 12,250. Really, really easy to do so far. So nothing crazy. So now it says how many unique users appear in the data set and how many events are associated with the user James. This is like, it's so awesome how easy and simple these things are to use. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to go to all these fields that are available on the side right here, and you want to click on user, and then it now shows you 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't even need to click on it because it literally just says the number right next to it, which is 4. So 4 users are associated with this particular series of events, and then for the James person, you see that his count is 5, and so you just see that number as well. So super, super easy. But since we're going to be dealing with James, I'm actually going to click on James now so that my search query updates at the top right here. And now I'm only looking at events for James, the 5 events that are associated with James. And very, very easy, very simple to do so far. And then we have what utility was used in the oldest event associated with James, and then what event ID followed the process creation events. So that, and then this is a very interesting syntax and phrasing for this question. So what event ID followed process creation associated with James? So that's the thing, right? So there's what we're looking for in this case is the event that followed, that came after the process creation event, and that's the specific event that we're looking for. And this was a little thing that kind of tripped me up a little bit. So we are just going to look for the oldest event, the utility that was associated with the oldest event, and then the event ID. So since he only has 5 events, this is actually very easy to do. But the events are going to be in chronological order from the most recent to the oldest. So the one at the very, very top is the most recent, and the one at the very, very bottom is going to be the oldest. And then this also just looks the most sketch. Like this is the most suspicious looking event right here because it has all of this freaking text block and like this random code that's in here. So this most likely is what we're going to be searching through. So what we're looking for is utilities that are going to be inside of this thing somewhere. So the easiest way to do this is literally click on the browser screen, do Control F, and depending on what you have, it's either Command F or Control F for find, and then you're just going to look for the word utility. And then when you type that, in my particular case, there's 2 matches that show up here. And so the first one doesn't really give me much, but the WMI command line is the actual name of the utility, but what they're looking for is the executable name. And then so if we just kind of follow this string along right here, you'll see that it's actually in this piece right here. And by the way, you can add any of these things to search right here, but I don't want to do that. But if I zoom in right here, this is kind of blocking my my search right here. So if I do this and come right here, you see that wmic.exe is the name of the actual executable. And then there's also, if I just click one more time, it'll take me to another one down here, WMI command line, and then I can just go for this as well, and it'll bring me again to the same result, which is wmic.exe. So that's the executable that we are looking for, and that was the answer to this question. So what utility was used? It was WMI command line, WMIC command line. And finally, what event ID follows the process creation associated with James? And again, super easy to do. You just go up to all of these suggested fields that we have right here, or the interesting fields that we have right here. And what we're going to look for is event IDs. And so there's literally one called event ID. Super easy. So you click on that, and then now we have 2 events. That's it. And this is, again, super, super easy because it's so low in volume. There isn't much activity that's happening. In a lot of other cases, there's probably more activities and you have to do a deeper dive. So I would recommend you go through the Splunk videos that are on the channel so you can actually find those kind of like the deeper dive types of investigations that we did, because this one is super, super basic. So we have 2 events here. The first event, if we just click on it, it'll show us in the comments what this actually is, or in the message, excuse me. And in the message it says process create, right? So this is the first one, and it's process create. And if you remember, the question is kind of phrased interestingly, where it says what event ID followed process creation events, right? So that means what event ID came after the process creation events associated with James. And so since there's only 2 events, we can just deduce from process of elimination that the event ID that came after this one is event ID number 3, right? So super basic. And when you look at event ID number 3, so let's go back over here, and then where's the event ID button? Right here, event ID, and then we click on event ID number 3, and then this is the event ID that shows up right here. And actually, so let's make it a little bit easier even. So if I just click on event IDs, and let me see, there's only 2 values over here. It should actually only show right here. So since we're doing chronological order, right? So remember we said that it shows you the most recent at the top, and then it'll show you the older ones as you go down. So this is the most recent at the top, and the event ID is number 3 for this one. So this is the most recent. That means it came after everything else. And if I scroll down and find the other one, which is event ID number 1. So this one came first. So after this event came the very next event, which is the last event, which is event ID number 3. And that is how we find that. So there's a few different ways that you can break that down and try to find that. But that was it. That was literally it for this entire room. And very, very basic exercise, but now you kind of understand what Splunk looks like if you've never seen Splunk before. I do recommend that you go actually check out the Splunk videos that we have on the channel, so it can be a little bit more eye-opening of an experience, and you see more in-depth investigations just to make it more fun, and you can know how to mess around with those things. So that was it for this particular room, for logging for accountability. Very, very straightforward, very easy to understand. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of it. If you did get value out of this room, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and all that good stuff so you can join our community on this lovely, wonderful channel. There's been a lot of great stuff happening, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of it. There's currently 152 videos, not including the one that is being recorded right now. There's a lot of compilation videos, like long tutorials, longer than 5, 6, 7 hours. And we are, the community has been growing. So I'm very, very excited about it. It would be amazing to have you. I respond to all of the comments that come through our comment section, either if you're trying to just say hi, or if you actually have questions that you want answered, or if you just want to say thanks, any of those things. A lot of people just say thanks, or they leave some kind of a nice compliment, which is really cool. And then some people just ask a question, and if there's a question, I'll drop the answer for you as well. And then if it's like a really heavy duty question, then I'll go create a video in response to your comment, in response to your question. So Would be amazing to see you in our community, and it would be really nice to hear from you in the comment section. So make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff, share the video and everything else, just so you show a little bit of love. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my entire plug for that. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker / protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I will see you in the next video. Later.